You know, weaponizing the entity of Pennywise seems like a perfectly rational thing to do if you are an idiot. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. The second episode of It, Welcome to Derry is here. And I will say this off the top, I enjoy this episode a lot more than I did the first one. I think some of the CG, I'm going to do my best in this episode to not harp on how bad the CG is at times. There's a moment where it does take me out, and I'll get to that. But this episode, there's a lot more in character development and character study. So it works a lot better for me when we put our characters through some of the paces, that the fear works a little bit better because I care more about the people that are going through these sad situations. So we pick up the episode with sort of a retelling or what we didn't see. We get to see in full CG glory the winged creature just ripping through those kids in that movie theater because Lily is having night terrors and fear and horror, reliving that moment over and over and over again. Poor girl is shaking in her sleep. Because of this killing and because of the previous situation that occurred with Maddie, all circling around that theater, dead kids, Maddie missing, all signs are pointing to Ronnie's father and Ronnie's father having to do with the death of all of these kids. And that's what the community is sort of pinning it on him. Doesn't help that he is a black man and is sort of an easy person to sort of scapegoat on this. Like, nope, it's the black dude at the movie theater that's causing all this problem to happen. Because this is where all the bloodshed happened. They found the bodies there, or lack of bodies. They just found blood there. And so these cops are just kind of outside, pinned up watching Ronnie's place, kind of trying to be antagonistic towards Ronnie's family to try to catch them, to make them feel intimidated. They're basically just trying to intimidation factors towards it. And because of all of this, Ronnie's been kept out of school for the last week because her dad, understandably so, was like, hey, everybody's got their eyes gunned for me and my family. I don't want to put her in a situation where she's going to have all of this coming towards her. But he and his mother, her grandmother, are having sort of these dialogues back and forth saying, like, no, she's got to get back out there. Like, you can't hide her and protect her from all the stuff that's going to happen in this world. Now, this is coming from a grandma who's probably dealt with far more racism than her son has. And so she's like, no, you just got to pick yourself up by the bootstraps, dust yourself off, and just kind of go back through it. You can't hide from all of this. While that's happening, the rest of Major Leroy Hanlon's family arrives to Derry. And it's his wife, Charlotte, played by Taylor Page, and then their son, Will. This family is important if you just know the history of It and Stephen King's, the first two chapters of Stephen King's It, as that they are lineage to Mike, one of the folks in the Loser Club. So it's all connected, it's all ties in together. That is why that name, if you didn't think about it before, that's why that name rings so true here. Major Leroy has a steadfastness to him to want to integrate into this community. Be damned of all the things that show this ain't the best idea. People giving them looks, people not responding, while both Charlotte and Will throughout this episode have a much harder time working themselves into this system. And they all have different ways of sort of dealing with that. Mind you, Charlotte sees that Leroy has had some injuries happen since she's last seen him, and he can't tell her because he's in a classified program. He can't give that information. So there's a lot of, he can't share himself to her the way that she fully likes to share everything with everyone. What we see at the school is that Derry is in a curfew effect. Derry, because, them dead kids, them kids be dying. We can't have all these other kids out there. So there is a 9 o'clock curfew that is in effect for everybody. Lily and Ronnie connect at school, much to the chagrin of all the eyeballs. Everybody's looking at them. And then the patty cakes with Marge is a part of them in this moment anyway. They sort of all are looking like, why is Lily talking to Ronnie? Like, what do they have to talk about? And there's a lot happening here, and that Marge is sort of in between worlds. Like, she wants to be a part of the patty cakes. We learned that she was once a part of them, as was Lily. Lily had a psychotic break that happened to her, and sort of Marge and Lily split off. Um, Marge wants to be a part of them, but the leader of that group don't really want her to be a part of that. She keeps, anytime she can take her down a peg, does so to Marge. But Marge also isn't with Lily because she wasn't there at the theater. She doesn't know what she's going through. She doesn't understand. She hasn't talked to Lily in a week since she's been back, so she feels kind of in between two worlds. When they get to class, she tells Lily, like, "Hey, we haven't talked in a week, but I want you to know you need to stay away from Ronnie. Like, whatever it is you're talking about, she is a dead person walking. Like, her father, you know who her father is. Like, you can't be associated with her because if you are, we're not going to be able to get back in with the patty cakes." And Lily's like, "I don't give a rat's ass about the patty cakes. Kids is dead. Like, people in front of me died. Like, that is the least of my concerns. I don't care about that. Stop talking to me about vegan the patty cakes." It's at that point that Will shows up to class late, and then he gets a bit of the racist initiation that happens in that class. Even though both there's a kid named Rich who sort of says, "All right, this kid might be all right," but all the white kids in that class, not a big fan of Will coming in. So Hanlon reports back to his base, and there he finds out that Masters was the one that was responsible for the beating that he took. Was one of the three men. The other two they haven't found out, but they know Masters is weak enough that they push him a little bit, he's going to flip. Um, Hanlon accepts it, but has a question, and that question is the weapon that was used, which was a macro PM, a gun that he is familiar with, and kind of gets his wheels spinning, and like it doesn't quite make sense that Masters is the person who did this, but we're going to come back to that later in the episode. Charlotte gets into town, and she's walking. She gets some looks, but she feels like, all right, for the most part, I can kind of get used to this. She's walking around town, and while she's in the butcher, she notices outside that there are a group of bullies beating up on this one kid outside, and no one is doing anything. Like, they're just letting it happen. No one's coming to this kid's aid. No one's coming to stop. So she runs across the street, stops traffic, gets like honked at, and tells these kids to back off, like leave him alone. The kid scurries off, but those three kids kind of give her a look like, "Do you know where you at and who the hell you are?" And all these other people, including the butcher that was kind of being friendly-ish to her, all give her this look and be like, "Hey, you a black woman. You can't just go up to a white man, even though he's a teenager, he's a kid. You can't just go up to a white man and put your hands on him and expect us not to think that something's wrong with you. Like, that's not how things go here." And then when she gets home to talk about this with her family, Leroy doesn't really back her up because it seems like Charlotte has had some of these interactions before. She's willing to like buck the system, say what is, "Hey, we're being racially discriminated with." She's willing to speak from the high heavens about anything that she feels is out of the ordinary, to how she should be treated. And Leroy's kind of like, "Stop. Don't always buck the system. Sometimes let's just go with it, see what happens. And like, we'll call out when racist stuff happens, but we don't always have to be the loud person or the person that makes it so obvious that we're in on this." And Charlotte in this asked if anything like this racial stuff has happened to her, Will at school. And Will's kind of like, "I don't want to have this conversation. Like, I don't want to talk about this. Everything at school is fine." He wants to deal with it in his own way. And he especially doesn't want Charlotte, his mom, to go there because it's going to only make matters worse because she can't be there all the time. And so he's kind of like, "Can I just leave the table? Like, I don't want to have this conversation." It's clear that these type of discussions about how to deal with the racial component of their family and how the world sees them is varying by all three of them. And typically he seems like he ends up in the middle. It's like, "I just don't want to have the conversation. Can I dip?" We get our first Pennywise almost sight, with the eyes at the very least, a very, very terrifying sequence that happens to Ronnie. Ronnie still is overhearing that her father and grandmother are going back and forth about what to do with the way the world is coming down on them. Pennywise goes for broke. I don't know what Pennywise's power set is at this point. It seems like because he's killed so many kids that he seems to be significantly stronger than he is when he gets to um, it chapter 1 and 2. He seems to be a lot weaker there, and here he's in full force because the stuff that he's doing, this is terrifying as hell. But he has Ronnie looking like she's being suffocated under the sheets with water then coming up, basically recreating the womb is sort of what occurs in her bed. because then we find out through this terror that Ronnie's mother died in the childbirth of her. And Pennywise plays into that, like, "Oh, you killed me, and I just wanted to hold you, and you killed me, and all this stuff." It is frightening, and the umbilical cord is still tied into her. It is very gory, and most of the stuff looks, it's practical, it's shot in darkness, it all looks good. There's a part that pulls me out just a bit, is that they have um, teeth show up on the mom's belly as she's bringing her back in from the umbilical cord, like, "Come back to mommy, come back in." Um, that almost pulls me out. They don't live on that shot too much, because then they go to show Ronnie biting the umbilical cord to get blood all over her to kind of like separate herself. So it goes back to a more practical effect after the fact. But that almost pulls me out. But everything else in this scene is so gorgeous that I'm going to not fault for just a brief moment of teeth, poorly bad looking teeth, to take away from the entire shot. It's stunning. It's a really well done Pennywise moment. And then her dad comes into the room and breaks the vision. But she is terrified. She's done. So there's three airmen that are commiserating and talking about their jobs at a bar. Clearly is a bar with nothing else but white folks, but they are the three there. But because they are airmen, they're kind of allowed to sort of be there in that moment. One of them is named Dick Halloran, who is a character that we should have some familiarity with. If you're a Stephen King fan, he is a big part of The Shining and Doctor Sleep. He is a character that has The Shining, which is a telepathic ability. So it is clear that his purpose here is for something we'll get to in a minute, something due to do his telepathic ability. So he's given a little bit more leeway, a little bit more privilege than probably the typical African American airman. That said, they're chilling, they're off to their side, and then the Chief Bowers comes in. He comes in, he's just trying to debrief and deconnect from the day. I can imagine that his day has been hell because everybody's coming in telling him, like, hey, how did he do his job? And then the deputy, and I'm assuming the mayor, I couldn't quite get the make of who the other person was, but two men come up to him who are higher officials who have sort of put him in this place as a chief. They'd give him the riot act, like, hey, have you hired that Negro yet? I mean, arrested that Negro yet? Because clock's ticking. We got families that are sad, don't know what the hell's going on. He's clearly responsible. And for a moment, Bowers is kind of like, look, I'm still doing an investigation. The man has an alibi, and this is America. And the deputy's like, nah, this ain't America, son. This is Derry, and we do things differently here. Like, you need to figure this out. And basically, he threatened them. It's like, look, you can take a time all you want. You can enjoy your drink. You can decompress, do all that stuff. But I'm going to tell you what, if you don't speed this process up and you don't go ahead and arrest that Negro, the next time that we have one of these official elections, I don't know if you're going to be back here as a chief. So do with that what you will. They go back about their job. And to sort of pull rank and feel good about himself, because he's being put under a foot by those two men, he decides to puff his chest out and make a call. And he has the bartender tell that those three airmen, the black three men that were just having a good time, not bothering anybody, that they need to leave. It's his way of showing that he at least can get something done, and somebody will listen to him in that moment. So they decide then to go to a location where they can still drink and just have a good time. They don't show it in this, but if you've read the book or read the prequel part of it, the spot is a location that is specifically just for African American airmen or military men, not just airmen, called the Black Spot. We don't get to see it here, but we can see the ramifications of when they leave there, because apparently they do that top shelf bottom liquor, like the moonshine. Like, you're not just doing beers there, you getting sauced up. There are three sheets when they make it back to their base to go back on to base. Now, they're after curfew. They're after their lockdown. So technically, they should not be allowed in. There should be some rules put into place that says that they can't get there. However, because of Dick's privileges, his name gets bandied about, and they are allowed to just go back through. And the other two airmen kind of like, well, hold on, what is it you're doing? He's like, it's classified, can't tell you. But we'll get to that too. Actually, the next point of that is the one of the military folks come up to Dick the next day. He's kind of recovering from a hangover, But he informs him like, hey, yo, we've been to several dig sites over the last couple of months, and I don't know how many more times we're going to do this, but you seem to be enjoying the privileges that you get because you're doing this job. And so if that's the case, the reason you're here, the gifts that everybody's saying that you have, you need to start putting them to good use and like actually deliver us something, or else some privileges may end up stopping. And so this is us learning more and more. This is why that Stephen King, Doctor Who, The Shining piece, they're using his telepathic abilities to sort of search for something. What that is, we'll find out at the back end of the episode. At school, Lily is sitting by herself when Ronnie comes in and sort of check her, like, hey, you need to do a better job of telling me my daddy wasn't involved in this. And while that's happening, the patty cakes are seeing off to the side, seeing Ronnie and Lily discuss and talk to each other. Marge keeps doing, she is the girl, the pick me girl. She wants to be chosen by this patty group, this patty cakes group so bad that she is overdoing the jokes and the laughs to sort of be a part of this group, to say, ingratiate herself back into this group. The leader of this group does everything possible to like, hey, you might got these other two girls, fool. I'm going to knock you down a peg. So she calls her out. I'm like, hey, isn't that the same sweater you wore yesterday? Anytime she can, she tells Marge, shut up, and I'm going to put you back in this place. While that's happening, though, on the other table, Ronnie and Lily are having a very heated and spirited discussion. Ronnie wants Lily to just come through and be like, hey, you need to tell them that my daddy had nothing to do with this. My daddy wasn't there. And she's like, well, I already told him he wasn't there. But I can't tell them what I actually saw, because then they're going to think I'm crazy and put me back in Juniper Hill. And back is important because she has spent some time there once because of what happened to her father. All a bit of a psychotic break then. So she's been there before. She ain't got no plans at all to go back in there. She's none. She's like, I'm not doing that at all. I don't even damn what it does to your daddy. I'm not going back there. It's at that point that Ronnie's like, I just had a premonition. Like, it just came to visit me. I saw it. I know what you saw. And Lily's like, hold on. I don't know what I saw. I'm not telling anybody what I saw because ain't nobody telling me that I'm crazy. I'm not about to look like a nutcase in this. I don't know what I saw, but I specifically told them that it wasn't your dad. And that's what I told the cops. Ronnie's kind of like, you need to go in there and tell them what you actually saw. And Lily's like, I can't do that. Like, self-preservation says I can't do that. And versus, I don't want anything bad to happen to your dad, but I'm not doing that at the behest of myself. To that point that Ronnie gets up and tells like, this is some bullshit, like out in front of everybody, which don't matter what your ethnicity is, you go into detention, you start cursing in the middle of the school like that. While that lunch is happening in the hallways, Will is eating his lunch by his locker. He doesn't feel comfortable enough to go, and there's not going to be a space for him to eat at the cafeteria. So he's eating in the hallway, and he befriends the young man who you saw in his classroom named Rich. And they're kind of like these new, you're slowly starting to see this version of the loser club we thought was the loser club in the first episode, the actual loser club sort of be assembled here, this version of it for this era. And they sort of have a commiserate before a stink bomb is thrown in the hallway. He runs, ends up into the teacher whose class he was late for before, it ends up having to go to detention. While in detention, he befriends and meets Ronnie. Will and Ronnie meet and have a real, it's a sweet moment. It's a wholesome moment. It's the moments that I think make these chapters, these things work, because you start caring more about the kids. They have a really good connection to see that, hey, you're weird. You like science, but I kind of dig it. So it's okay. And they have a bit of a connection before Ronnie sees, looking outside the window, that Lily is being put in the back seat of a squad car, which she knows if that's happening, they're about to apply some pressure to Lily, and her dad is about to be in a bad way. Like, she just knows this ain't about to go well. Lily at the precinct with Clint, who is now what seemed to have originally been a little bit more on the up and up. He's now just going full dirty cop. He's doing everything to apply pressure to Lily just to close this and get this done with, so he can keep his position, so everything can be fine with him, and he can close his case. And what he's doing, he keeps telling Lily, like, hey, I know you told me once before that Ronnie's dad wasn't there. Cool, I heard that. However, I do recall you spending some time in Juniper Hill, like, and saying you're crazy. Now, if it wasn't her dad, then who was it? Which is like, I'm telling you, well, I don't know who it was, but it wasn't here. It's like, well, then if you don't know who it was, And maybe you're not the victim. Maybe it was you that did it. She's like, you think I have something to do with it? And he doesn't. There's no way he thinks that Lily did this. But he's kind of like, I got to play this card because I need to push you to a point where you can answer this in a way that I can get what I need. And he threatens her. He's like, look, here's the deal. How about I put you in Juniper Hill for a couple of days just to see where we stand, where we actually are. And she freaks out. She's like, no, don't put me back in there. I don't want to go back in there. I have no desire at all to go back in there. Please don't do that. He's like, okay, cool. Well, Jorge, here's the option. I'm going to re-ask the question of not whether or not Ronnie's dad was there, whether you can wholeheartedly, positively, absolutely 100% sure that her father wasn't there. And obviously she's going to answer that in a way that like it's going to give him enough cachet to go ahead and arrest her dad. So they do. This big hubbub. Ronnie goes running, sprinting to Lily's house, banging on her door. It's like, what did you do? What did you say? Lily's like, I got tricked. I didn't mean to. I don't know what's going on. Her mom, Lily's mom, slams the door, and Ronnie's just screaming outside, like, what did you do? What did you say? It's a tough situation that they have there. Hanlon keeps up on the thread of that macro PM because he knows something isn't adding up. So he goes to talk to Masters, takes a macro PM gun and then a clip and puts them side by side on the bench between the two of them and kind of is like, look, I don't think you did this. Like, I know you weren't there because a person who is able to load that type of gun can do so typically, and it takes two attempts to go to try to get it done. It's a hard gun to load, and the person that night did it in a snap. I looked at your file and know that you can barely do a M16 correctly, so I know good and damn well you can't do this correctly. And so I'm fairly confident that this wasn't you that night who did this to me. And Masters is like, you don't think I want your black ass off this base? He was like, no. That part I do believe you did. I absolutely think you don't want me here. I just don't think this was you in that room. And Masters isn't letting on, and Hanlon doesn't have the full proof yet in this moment to sort of say, okay, I know you weren't there. So he pushes a little harder and he starts using Master's mom as a way to get him angry enough so that Master picks up the gun and the clip and can't get that damn thing loaded for shit. Like nothing. He can't get it at all. To the point where Hanlon's like, cool, you've just proven my point. Appreciate you, bro. And he takes off and he goes to talk to General Shaw. In General Shaw's office, he's like, look, Masters might be racist, but he wasn't there. And I'm going to open up an investigation with higher ups to sort of get under the hood of this and figure out who it is. But he needs to be released. You got the wrong man in prison. And General Shaw at that point says, hold on a minute, son. Before you go do all of that, let me let you know what was really going on. You had a brain injury in your last deployment that I needed to be sure that you were on the up and up and had your cognitive abilities and could still do everything the way that I thought you could in the first place. You are a man that has zero fear, which is an important aspect to anything that happens in this world. The fearful people is what Pennywise feeds off on. The fear folks, the non-fear folks, people who aren't afraid of anything, they're going to be a bit of a problem spot for him. So they were like, no, we need a guy with no fear. So this was a test. I set all of this up to kind of see if you would pass. And you did. Pass with flying colors. To the point where Hamlin was like, well, hold on. Those folks were using pipes to actually hit me. And Shaw was like, well, they went a little too far. That wasn't a part of the plan. I, however, can't give you those names. Like, I told them to do this without me being a rat, and I'm not going to rat them out now. That's just not how I operate. But give me 10 minutes, and I can explain to you exactly why I did what it is that I did. The other Pennywise moment that happens in this episode then occurs is Lily goes shopping. And the second she walks into that the store, you can start seeing people's heads turn towards her. As the thing started, Pennywise starts to get more and more entrenched into the folks here in this world and into her head. And the aisle, she starts going down. It starts getting more closed in and more closed in. People start doing more of the head turns to Pennywise, like ticks that he sort of has. You see one kind of following behind her in the aisleways. You see, you hear the PA speaker start calling her out. It's a pretty creepy moment. And then she gets to a point where she's basically enclosed in almost all four ways. She still has a back entrance, but it's much tighter than it was. And she sees cereal boxes with all the dead kids on it. Maddie, Susie, all of them are on those boxes, and they start to deteriorate. She starts freaking out. She runs out, and she runs to basically a spot where she can't get out with pickle jars all around her. If you remember the previous episode, she was the pickle girl. Clearly, something occurred. I don't have it all pieced together, but something happened where her father died. Parts seem to have been separated inside of a pickle factory. That's what I'm gathering from all of this. But in her fear, her dream, her manifestation, her dad's head shows up in one of the pickle jars, and then some of the other body parts start showing up everywhere else, and then they break and start coming after her. Everything about this scene absolutely works. The response that she is getting from the kid is terrifying. The walls closing in, all of it works. I just really wish that this pickle monster was practical. Or a puppet or something, but because whenever you use CG, there's just a weightlessness that it has that just takes some of the aspect of fear out of it. I think the scene works because at this point I do really give a damn about Lily, but it would work even better had it been like a puppet or it didn't look as cartoony as it did. But I feel like that's going to be a recurring thing that just happens throughout all of this series because it happened in both chapters of it, but more so in chapter 2. That's just the way that this director chooses to sort of shoot some of these manifestations of fear. That's it. She comes out of it, and she's in the middle of the store. She broke a pickle jar, and she is crying and screaming out for dear life, with everybody looking at her and watching her, and just like, what the hell is going on with you, Lily? To the point where her mama puts her in a car and takes her ass back to Juniper Hill and drops her off and like, deuces, you crazy, I'm out. Which that sucks. No matter how she tried to play it, she wound up right back in the place that she did not want to go into, which I'd imagine is going to be terrifying for her in the next episode, with her being actually inside this psychiatric ward and fear just pouring and rushing over her. So General Shaw grabs Major Hanlon, and takes him to the dig sites and basically shows him, like, this is what we've been working on. And you see the dig sites, we've been digging and trying to find out things. Basically, we are trying to get a leg up against other military teams in this Cold War. And the weapon that we're looking for was buried years ago under Derry. And my brain immediately clicked, like, oh my God, these morons are trying to find and weaponize the actual entity of Pennywise, the fear, wherever that beacon is, they want to, wherever that piece is, they want to manifest it and make it work for them. But they have no idea how it works. Like in this speech to Hanlon, he's like, I don't know how it works or what it does. I just know that when somebody gets around it, it takes over complete fear for that person, so much so that that man could just die on impact, with the fulfillment of fear that happens over their body. Don't know where it came from, don't know how it works, but we're going to try to weaponize that bad boy. That just sounds nuts, but also sounds like something that absolutely the military would do. The only thing that they are aware of is that it is surrounded by beacons. And I think once they find those beacons, they'll be able to triangulate where things are. And then Major Hanlon, that's where you're going to come in, because you don't have fear. You'll be able to go in and capture what it is that we need. Seems like a good plan, right? Dick shows up and they see it. So then at that point, they're like, look, I think we might have found something. So the four of them, I can't remember the other officer's name, but Dick, General Shaw, Hanlon, and that other officer go to the actual site, and they dig up a car, which I'm assuming is now beacon number 1, or one of the beacons that they need to find. And it has a bunch of dead bodies in it with money. Apparently, it looks like Pennywise got to some people after a bank robbery, but they are all, it's several deceased bodies and bones up in there with money pouring out. And we go to black, and they say, I think we're close. And that's the episode. A much stronger episode for me than the first, mainly because we do less of the cheesy stuff, and more of the like, let's build out these characters, let's build out this world. I didn't bring it up, but we get to see the erection of the Paul Bunyan statue, which, if you are a It fan, either chapter, you know how much that Paul Bunyan thing means to Derry and to this world and how it all comes together. They're throwing small breadcrumbs to sort of like tie everything together, which is pretty cool to see. And I did know that the Doctor Who, the Shining piece was going to sort of integrate itself into this, but that works. I like it. It's a fun story. It's going to end up tragically. You're not going to be able to weaponize Pennywise. We all know that. We as an audience are like, that's a terrible idea, but it'll be fun to see to what length they attempt to do so. It's a really well done story so far. I like how that we're taking our time now to build the next Loser Club. We dispatched the first one so quickly. This new version of it with these new kids with Rich, Ronnie, Lily. Probably Marge is going to end up being de facto a part of that as well. It's all sort of coming together, and it's going to be interesting to see how these kids and Will. I'm sorry, I forgot Will. They all come together and see how what it is that they can do to fight fear. I think fear is even stronger in this time for a lot of people, both men and women, but especially for the Black kids. When you have racism and you have sexism that sort of exists at a rampant pace in this time, the ability to wallow in fear is higher than it would be for like a typical straight white male, unless you're just a loser, quote unquote. What did you guys think about the second episode of It, Welcome to Derry, called The Thing in the Dark? Go ahead and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on X at Hollywood80i. You can hit us up with email at hollywoodalreadydidit@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. That's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.